Hello and welcome to the second episode. Joining me is the beautiful Katherine Tsagaris. She is a highly respected educator, having a ton of trauma-informed training under her belt. Katherine has taught in London, Finland, the US, Melbourne, including Victoria's only school within the juvenile justice system, and Byron Bay. She has also explored all facets of education, and she has been a passionate tutor, teacher coach, campus principal, and senior director. In 2020, she left the boardroom for exploring the learning happening in broader spaces. Today, she delivers one-on-one teaching coaching support and provides consultation for schools, delivering speaking at events, supports homeschooling for families leaving the education system, and both supports and facilitates workshop spaces at retreats that have focus on personal growth, rites of passage for teenagers, as well as monumental relationships between the mother and daughters. In this episode, Kat talks about her journey as a teacher, as well as living as an eternal life student simultaneously. We unravel our journey of self-discovery and how we uncover life's layers by taking radical responsibility of our own experiences. We unpack the many crazy life stages and how our teenage years have shaped us, as well as hormonal teenagers through the lens of a teacher. Let's dive straight in, guys. We'll see you at the end of the episode. Hello and welcome to the Honesty Policy Hour. I'm your host, Stephanie Marie, and it's time to put everything on the table on this beautiful journey of healing all areas of our lives, one deep conversation at a time. Hello, Katherine. Hello, my darling. Welcome. Well, I'm so excited to have you here, and I think, as I was saying, I don't think anyone would be more excited than actually Phil and Katherine.
I was just going to say, I'm excited to be here. And then I was laughing thinking, oh yeah, they're going to be rapt about this.
Yes. So Phil and Katherine are our mutual friends. Phil is actually a good friend of mine, and another Katherine.
And Kathy is my friend, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And they are married, or almost married. And they've been speaking about each other to each other for a long time.
Yeah, I was hearing so much like, my friend Steph, you'd really like her.
I love that. It just shows that, like, the authenticness and everything that we are and represent, it just breathes volume, and people can see that, and I love that.
And they set us up. They successfully set us up. So Steph came down to Byron for a holiday where I live, and we caught up, and we were like, you're awesome. We get along so well. I fucking love you. And
We're victims of a friendship hookup.
They've got a great strike rate for friendship setups. They've nailed it so far.
I love that. So Phil and Katherine, hello.
Hi, Kathy. Hi, Phil. Thanks.
Amazing. Oh, love it.
How funny.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're about, all that stuff.
No worries. Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Katherine Tsagaris. I love Kat, so you'll hear Steph refer to me as Kat throughout the podcast. I have been in education for almost 16 years. I specialize in working with traumatized, angry, and vulnerable teenagers. I've taught in South London, in Melbourne. I've taught in Helsinki, Finland, New York, New Orleans, and in Byron Bay, where I currently live. In that 16-year stint, just over 8 years was spent at the Juvenile Detention Centre in Victoria. I've done a few things outside of education too. So I've been supporting and facilitating in retreat spaces. These are sometimes personal development focused, sometimes like exploring the relationship between mothers and daughters, like mother-daughter retreats. I've been doing some consultation for schools and coaching and supporting teachers, and I'm deeply obsessed with freedom and health and vitality and integrity. And that's where you and I connected. And that's, I think, what Kathy and Phil noticed about us as a commonality and went, oh, these two will get along really well. And they nailed it. We voice note every day. We've practically got 19 podcast episodes already.
I said, I'm like, we're just best to compile all of our voice notes and there's a podcast. Pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah.
I love it. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, which is actually a big thing because not everyone's a voice note person. I definitely am, but I totally understand that not a lot of people are. But you and I just got on straight away and we're like, oh, yeah, this is great.
I'm all about it. I am so all about it because
it's good.
It's great, especially when you're like, because I feel like texting takes a different type of energy. You just got to sit down and like, it takes
and
time.
Phone calls are hard because you got to be, free at the same time, and you've got to, you're a mama, you've got a family. Did you say you've got a dog as well?
I do. I have a border collie. So we missed that
so
one.
Much. How do we not cover this already in our voice notes?
I have no idea.
But voice notes are so much easier, I find, and yeah, it's been great for us.
I know it is. And it's funny when you voice note someone that's not into it, you're like, hello. And I'm like,
you can hear the awkwardness. They're like, I'll just address everything you said. And you're like, oh, bless. No, you don't need to do that.
And don't fucking do that again, please. Thank you. No more.
Yeah. Or you just, and they just text the reply and you're like, you're one of them. Okay.
Gotcha. Sorry. Understood the boundary.
I was just going to ask you, having a dog, do you feel like that's a really beautiful thing for Atlas, like to grow up with a dog in the house?
100%. 100%. I just see, I see kids that don't have dogs and how scared a lot of them can be of dogs. And it's it can be a little bit of negative too, because he thinks that Atlas thinks all dogs are a Koga, our dog. And I'm like, you got to learn, like we have to eventually teach him that not all dogs are incredibly friendly. But yeah, I don't know, he's just understand, like I'm trying to teach him. Obviously he's at that age now where he's a bit more grabby and pulley, so I have to teach him a little bit about that. But I have seen massive positive effects with him. And also my dog too, he's become a lot more gentle. He wasn't really a fan of young kids because of the grabbiness, but they've been great with each other. And yeah, it's really beautiful. I've also heard that the being around the hair, so it actually helps a child's immune system. Funny fact.
That's great.
So yeah, it's been really positive. So yeah,
that's beautiful.
It is. It's so nice. So let's talk a little bit about your journey in regards to self-development. You've had a crazy one, and it's beautiful. I want to love to hear a little bit about it again.
Sure. God, it's really hard to know where to start because there's like the personal development that, there's questions that someone may start to ask themselves, like, this isn't really quite the life that I said I wanted to live, and how am I here, and why am I here, and what do I do about it, or what can I do about it? So there was a little bit of that throughout my early 20s. Like I just remember finishing uni and then getting a job. And I don't know, I hadn't left Doncaster. I hadn't explored the world. What I loved about school was learning about all these different places, these cultures, these customs. The world is a magical place, and I was staying still, and I was like, I never said I wanted to live in Doncaster my whole life. And then a series of things in my personal life happened. I had a breakup. There was some stuff, family stuff happening, some friendship stuff happening. And it just became this, I came to this moment, and it felt like I was at a signpost with all these different signs pointed in different directions. And one said, like, apply for law school because that's something I'd always wanted to do. And another one said, buy a house. And another one said, go travel and go overseas. And another one said, apply for a promotion. And all of these were kind of conflicting. Like, I can't travel and be a full-time student, and I couldn't buy a house and travel. And I remember being a little bit stuck, and someone telling me, take one step in every direction and see how that feels. So I applied to get into law, got in, deferred myself for a year and thought, okay, applied for a pre-approval for a mortgage, got it, applied for a promotion at work, and was just tuning into how each of those felt. And then this beautiful woman that I worked with, she was really shy, and she came to me, and the recession was on. This was 2009, and she said to me, "Oh, Katherine, I remembered you said you were thinking of moving overseas, and I found this flyer, and there's these really cheap flights to London. And I know you said you wanted to go there." And I'm like, "Oh, thanks so much, Veronica." And anyway, so I rang the number that night, and the travel agent answered and said, "Hey, hun, we close in 10 minutes, and we've got a ticket left on the flight to London, and it's $1,400. So are you in or out?" And the aliveness and the fear and the excitement that was just exploding in my body, I was shaking as I said yes, and I felt like I was stepping off the edge of a cliff without any idea of where I was going, without a parachute, nothing. And yeah, and that was the beginning. That was the beginning of me taking a leap of faith into the unknown and starting to design a life of my own creation rather than whatever factory line I felt like I'd somehow started to fall in line into without my conscious choice. So yeah, so then I moved to London and had a big exploration there, and traveled around to Ireland and Greece and Russia, and did the running of the bulls in Spain, and oh my gosh, in Italy there was anyway, I won't bore you with traveling tales, but yeah, came back to Melbourne and then started working at the Juvenile Detention Centre pretty quickly as a teacher there. And then things kind of skyrocketed. I won Teacher of the Year while I was there, and then that pushed me into leadership quite quickly. So I became a campus prin at 29 while I was studying to get my Masters finished, and I loved it there until I knew that the next stage needed a shift. And that's when the attendance to workshops and spiritual teachers and things like that started to come into my life, because yeah, I'd reached that similar stage of like, this is great, I love it, and something doesn't feel like it fits anymore, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. So I started to go to some workshops, and in those workshops it was so deeply challenging, some of the activities that we did, that they deliberately designed in order to shake your sense of self, like our sense of self, and really challenge, preconceived notions of who we thought we were. Like, let's say I thought my identity was, I'm a lone wolf, I don't do group work. Well, where did that come from? And is that really true? So yeah, so I did a whole heap of those, and I found it such a fascinating journey, and each one I learned something new, and it was profound. And I was doing that alongside my teaching at that school and in that juvenile detention facility, and obviously there was growth there too. And then in 2020 things drastically shifted again, and I left there, and I'm an eternal student. I think that kind of, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit here, but I love learning. I love unpacking things about myself. If I get triggered about something now, it's not like, I look into why that is and what story I've made up about what's happened, and really picking it apart, and then taking a lot of radical self-responsibility for my part in it. Whereas, without the work that I've done a few years ago, I would have thought, for example, I don't know, Steph's pissed me off, therefore it's Steph's fault, therefore Steph's a dickhead, therefore, I should call someone and tell them that Steph's a dickhead, like get their opinion on the same thing, have them, agree to that, and then there's this, so
that's
I'm
beautiful.
so glad that that's not in the vortex, not a thing for me at all.
It's such a tricky place to get out of. It's so tricky because we victimize ourselves, and we're like, yeah, it's all their fault. How dare they make me feel offended? Whereas it's like, once you start pulling it apart, and you're just like, where does that place come from? It's it's such a beautiful place to realize when you actually do that. And I think if everybody did that, the world would be such a better place. It really would. It's just when you take accountability for your own shit, really.
Yeah. And, I've thought about that a lot. And obviously there are things that people can do which are harmful to us and which is their responsibility for sure. And I'm definitely not saying otherwise, but the more radical I've been with my own self-responsibility, the better I've gotten with my communication. I used to be so defensive. Like anyone came at me with anything, I was sensitive and defensive, which is such a tricky combination. And when I say tricky, that's complimentary. Like it's fucking difficult for the other person. Like, and that was, a strategy. Don't bring it up with me then, and therefore I can avoid these kinds of conversations. So really sitting with the discomfort of that, oh my God, the ego death and the humility I had to learn to go through that, it was priceless. And I'm so glad. And it was messy as fuck, and it was chaotic, and it was excruciatingly embarrassing. But thank goodness, I love that children's book. We're going on a bear hunt. We're going to catch a big one. They're not scared. Yeah. Swish, swish, swish. And they talk about this. They talk about you can't go over it. You can't go under it. You can't go around it. You've got to go through it.
Mic drop. I had no idea. What the fuck? Oh, my God, you just blew my mind. No way.
Isn't that gorgeous?
Oh my God. I did not know that that's what it was about. There you go.
Well, it is a bear hunt, but it's there's a literal meaning, but there's also a deeper layer to that. And
that's beautiful. Yeah. I say that all the time. The only way out of your shit is through it, and you've got to
sit in the shit, go through it, unpack it, then you can move through.
Yeah, don't distract yourself. Don't pretend it's not there, because it is. Yeah, it sure is. That is beautiful. Oh, my goodness. I'm going to get Atlas that book. Oh, my God.
Oh, please do. It's so good.
I will.
And it is tricky. You're right, because, some people can get stuck in the shit too, and then identify as, really defeated by this thing and go through a depressive episode that is so much longer than could have been needed. Arguably it's all perfect and it all ends up well, and it's the stage that people are in and what they need at that time. But I have found it interesting, going through that swampy period and, not getting stuck in there and continuing to walk through until I get to the other side.
Yeah, I think a good way to, when I do find myself in those situations, is taking 5 just to remove yourself from your thoughts, because an understanding that it's not one, you are not your thoughts, and just trying to eliminate. A good little tactic I actually heard was when you close your eyes and you visualize this situation that's really affecting you, you visualize it. It's always really big and above you when you do that. And it's by doing that, you're kind of being like, all right, it's taking over me. It's very overwhelming. So in your mind's eye, you kind of make it really, really small and compact, and you put it on the ground. So you are bigger than it, and you look at it as if to say it's just something that's not that bad. And that was a really beautiful way of seeing it, because it removed itself from me, and it wasn't on top of me, scaring me and overwhelming and just full on. It was just a small little object on the floor that I could just kick around and be like, it's all good. You're there, but you're not that bad. So that was a really beautiful way, because it just removed myself from feeling incredibly stressed about it.
Yeah. And you know what? This is what I love. I love you and your hacks, the Jedi mind tricks. I feel like you've got such a Mary Poppins bag full of them. Here's one that's perfect for this exact scenario.
I love that. It's perfect. Mary Poppins with the self-development hacks.
Yeah. It's the bag of the goodies for sure.
But yeah, it all is perception. It really is, because I know we just, the blame game and the victim and all that sort of stuff. It's just, we all do it, and I think that's the start of it, and that's the alarm bells of realizing, all right, here we go again. But I don't have to pursue with this. This is my alarm to stop it there, and then taking that break and doing all the things that you need to do to realize that it's not you. It's just something that's kind of coming through your world. And then
totally. And actually that the alarm system is our ego, which is designed to help protect us from danger. And actually like sitting with that alarm bell and working out, is it actually an alarm bell of death? Like, am I going to die here? And, you know, and then sitting with, okay, if I'm not, like, what exactly is this and how far can I go with something, you know, safely? How much can I challenge myself and push myself, and how much is actually too much? And yeah, I'm at capacity right now, and yeah, it's for another time, you know,
definitely.
when I'm regulated and calm and whatever.
And that's a good one to understand, that feeling where we get really overwhelmed and stressed and we do all the things that we shouldn't do in order to feel better. But I feel that that's a really, like, your body actually thinks it gets as stressed as it is death. But it's understanding that that's just your body's way of protecting you. It's not death, so it's not that bad. Like it might feel that way, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the line. This is just maybe an end of a period or an end of a moment that it's time to part with that situation or that person, or it may be just time to acknowledge it or have the chat about it. And that's, you know, the big thing that a lot of people avoid now. This is a big reason for this podcast, is to really get deep with vulnerability and conversation about this sort of stuff, because so many people shy away from it and nothing gets resolved.
Totally. There's so much that you just said there, and this is how, for anyone listening, this is how Steph and I just constantly get into the voice notes back and forward, because we just unpack and share so much every day. So for example, one of those could be public speaking. Like that's a really common one that people are like, oh, that equals death. Well, it doesn't actually equal death, does it? It just feels, you know, I'm acknowledging the adrenals flood the system. It's very nerve-wracking. We're social creatures. It can feel akin to death because we're being judged by our human peers and we're community-based, and people judging us and not including us could mean death thousands of years ago. It could mean we were ostracized and left to whatever wild animals were out there to eat us. But, yeah, I actually, like, this is another little development, personal development little journey that I took. As a teacher, people assumed that I was comfortable with public speaking, and it's different in front of kids as opposed to adults. Very different. So I went to the Seven Sisters Festival. It's a women's only festival run in Victoria, and it's beautiful, and there's different tents for different themed things. Like there's a business tent, and there's a movement tent, and there's a creativity tent, and there's workshops running throughout. And it's a really beautiful space that women can just retreat to, I guess, and just be amongst all of the experience of being woman, from maiden to mother to crone to whatever. And, yeah, I remember a poetry workshop was there, and I was so challenged by it that I'm like, I can't, so I have to. So I signed up. If you can't, you must.
You must.
Yeah, so I signed up, and what we had to do over the course of weeks was create our own poetry, and it culminated in us performing our poetry on stage to an audience. And I loved it throughout and kind of conveniently forgot about the end part. And then when I got to the end part, I was shaking like a leaf, like, you know, the embarrassing, like, paper is actually visibly largely trembling. And it was just like I was almost teary with like the fear, I guess. And thank goodness I did that, because that was my first step in speaking more publicly, owning my voice, expressing myself outside of like amongst friends and, you know, whatever might happen online or through my work. And and this is why it's so hard to like piece together the self-development thing, because there's so many different little bits and pieces like that just all contribute to all of our growth, you know. I'm actually interested to hear more about your journey too. I would love to hear how you've come to be where you are sitting in this beautiful Oprah chair.
Oh my goodness. It's that sort of stuff of like, just quickly addressing what you said about the speaking and the shaking, like moment that comes up, like a situation that happened to me, like in that situation it was my girlfriend's 21st and I was doing a speech, and it was one of the first times I had ever gotten up in front of a lot of people, and there was just a lot of boys, and I was fresh 21 and I was shitting my pants, and I had a couple of drinks, and I'm just standing there going, and what I had written wasn't perfect, or it wasn't great. I knew it wasn't great, and so I was embarrassed of that, plus nervous of what I was actually doing. So the combination, and I just remember someone at the back feeling sorry for me, and it's like, give her a break, guys, shush. And I was like, and I just felt myself just crumble into this tiny little ball, and I was like, I just want this moment to be over now. And isn't it funny? Like, I've never actually thought of that since then. So it was funny how it's like things like pop up as you actually talk about them, because it was, and I feel like that was a part that I actually had to go through, because I needed to, like, it's a great place to do it, like to start, like you did it at the workshop, probably around people that you wouldn't really have seen again after that. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I didn't know them. I did become friends with some of them, but yeah, I didn't know them beforehand.
Well, that situation would be way better to do it in front of a professional job where, it's a lot more at stake. So doing something like that in a place that doesn't really matter at the end of the day is really important, because don't wait until the stakes are really high in order to do something for the first time. So, my 21st speech that I did for a friend was my shitty moment that I had to get out of there.
Your foray into it.
It was just, it sounds ridiculous, but it was true. And then like every time I kind of did it after that, it wasn't as bad as that moment. No way. And it actually allowed me to actually spend more time preparing for it, actually read it a couple of times and proofread and do all the little things that I probably didn't do before. So having those lessons and learning from them, that's a big one. Learning from your shitty, scary moments.
Oh my God, the raw data you get is invaluable. What a gift for being in the arena. All these things you didn't know beforehand, all of a sudden you're like, okay, there's a million different ways I can make this better next time. And that's motivating.
And just listening to other people, like listening to other people speak, like when you really connect with other people that you're listening to, it could be a podcast or a radio station or whatever, and you're just so drawn into it, and you're like, why? What is it?
What's compelling about it?
Yeah. Why do they actually, like, I feel like I'm just floating in the air and it just like taking my soul. I'm like, what is that? Like, and it's usually their poise and their confidence and their ability to just really speak from the heart as well. I feel like if you're just reading a piece of paper versus actually just spilling out everything that you believe in, and you're really authentic and you believe in this heart and soul, it speaks volumes compared to just reading something on a piece of paper. Like, you can't fake that shit.
No, we're really energetic human beings. We know, we can feel it. Words is one thing, but like feeling how present someone is, and it's a completely different thing altogether.
Of course. But answering your question about my self-development, it's like, as you said before, like there's moments where it's just like uncomfortability. I don't like where I am right now and I need to do something about it. But then it happens again, and then it happens again, and then it happens again. And that's the beautiful thing about self-development. Once you've done one thing or you feel like you've healed, you're not forever healed and that this is it. I don't have to do anything for the rest of my life. There's just so many ego deaths that you have to go through. And it's just this, like, life is a roller coaster saying is just, it's spot on. I had my moment where I was like in my shitty job and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I did more things again, and had that moment where I entered it again. I don't want to do this anymore, and had to do it again. But I think the biggest one for me is where, I spoke a little bit about in my introduction of the podcast, where I was in this loveless career and I just did it because I kind of fell into it after school, and I had no idea who I was or what I wanted to be. And it was just, let's just do something because it kind of sounded good. I started interior designing, and I loved art. I loved creating, but I don't know, interior designing just sounded like a corporate version of arts that I was like, maybe it would be good. Maybe I'll make a bit of money or whatever. Turns out I fucking hated it. I was kind of good at it, but I didn't like it. And then I ended up in sales and in the architecture world and sales repping and all that sort of stuff and wearing heels every day. And I'm just like, this is not me. This is not me at all. And I'd go to the gym and I fell in love with it, and I was just training every night. And, you know, it was as soon as I'd park up at the front of the gym, it was the only moment I actually felt free in myself, because from the moment I woke up until the minute before I got to the gym, my life was very unpleasant and I really didn't enjoy it, and I didn't feel happy and I didn't feel grounded, or I didn't feel like I was myself. I was just wearing a mask from 9 to 5 until I got to the gym, and I was like, oh, fuck, put my runners on. I can be me now. And, you know, being like clumsy and self and just lift some weights and just, you know, feel energized again, until I'd go home and I had to go to bed and had to think about it again for the next day. And I was like, oh, no. So that was it. And I had to really do some digging, and I had a couple of people that come up to me and they're like, you'd be perfect to manage the gym. You'd be perfect. I'm like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. You know, I was making a decent money at where I was at doing sales, and it was good money. So I was like, oh,
and isn't that a hard one to sit with, because society and everyone else applauds the status jobs and the ones that pay really well. But if they don't make you happy, then it's not working. And it's, yeah. What if you could have that and do the thing that makes you happy?
And it's just about, you know, and that for me, jumping from such a high-end job down to, I wouldn't even say down to, but being a gym manager, like even when I told people what I was doing, they were like, are you sure you want to do that? Like people were like judging me. And I did feel that when someone actually asked me that I'd be good for that position, because I sort of automatically went to what my people would think about me and everyone else's opinion on me, and I knew it would be negative. So I did that to myself. But I was like, no, actually, like the more I thought about it, I'm like, I could get up every day and wear runners. I could wear runners every single day from start to finish. Like that alone makes me so excited. So like, sounds ridiculous.
Hell yeah.
But it was true. I was like, fuck wearing heels every day. I'm so uncomfortable. I hate it.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, how you going?
It's such
putting your professional voice on.
It can be a stiff environment for particular types of people, for sure.
Well, exactly. It wasn't me, and it wasn't my authentic self. And I knew that when I started feeling unwell on a Sunday afternoon at 4:00 because work had entered my brain. So I was like, no, I'm not doing that again. So I did. I took the leap, and it was the best thing I ever did, because I was having fun during my day. I was working, and that was where I started realizing how I loved connecting with people, because being at the gym, there's so many different types of people that go to the gym. It's not just your buff guys and your fitness freaks. It's everybody. It's, you know, 60-year-old Sharon who's, you know, got grandkids but just wants to be on the treadie for 20 minutes a day. And then you've got middle-aged men who just, you know, want to do a quick workout, and 16-year-old girls from after school. And it's such a massive, massive plethora of different people. And I got to meet all of them. And it was so nice, because I got to just speak to people how, like actually really listen to how people chose to move through this world. Like there was, you know, people chose to do things, or people fell into things like I had done. But I just saw how I connected to that and the gym world. And it was a really eye-opener for me of how I actually got to connect with people, and how much it made me feel really good inside to connect with people on such an authentic way and level. And I really honed in on that. I started yoga and meditation, and that was just connecting. I went plant-based around that time as well, and I just wanted to get more because the quality of food I was eating was really affecting me, because I was fresh off a bodybuilding competition. So I was very, just my diet and lifestyle were, it seemed to be super healthy, but it really wasn't, because I was binge eating. I had a really bad relationship with food after I competed. So there was a lot of stuff there that I had to unpack. So that was, for me, I saw the way I was binging, and like, we talk about eating disorders as a bad thing, and we just classify those two things as anorexia and bulimia. But for me, the binging was just something that I had never really heard of, and I never really classified it as an eating disorder. I don't think that I actually had one still, because it sounds really hectic, but the way it was for me, it was, people used to, because I was so healthy and I used to compete and I was super fit and looked great, that every time I eat bad food, people were like, oh, you're not supposed to be eating that. And those words got into my head to a point where I was like, oh my God, I don't do these things. So it got to a point where I'd be eating bad food in like pantry doors, just so I could get my fix, like my dopamine hit. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I had that moment, I was like, this is not healthy. This is not healthy. So I started really honing in on that and what it was. And I actually didn't realize that I was doing it until I started my health coaching course, because binge eating was a part of it, and it was a part of eating disorders, and a way to mask what's really happening inside you. And then that's where I started realizing it. And it was 9 years after the situation, I started realizing I guess how bad it actually was, and severity of that moment. So it's funny how, like, you don't have to heal things then and there straight after. It actually popped up 9 years ago when I actually realized that that was not a good thing to do. And if I spoke about that to somebody, I'd be like, oh, are you sure? Like, what else is happening? Talk to me about other things. But that was my way of kind of running away from my problems. And a lot of it was because I didn't know who I was, and people were judging me because I was eating bad food in public. But I wanted to eat bad food because I had spent, 52 weeks prepping and I didn't eat anything bad, and now I wanted to, but I was getting judged from it, so I had to do it in hiding.
Honey, I can't tell you how much I love you. Just like hearing your story and hearing this, like just seeing how you explore something, like you explored it. Firstly, even when you spoke about the speech at the 21st, like, look how many years later you're hosting a podcast of your own now.
Thanks, babe. That means a lot.
Little you back then, like, what? This would have been an absolute fucking nightmare. And because of your determination to explore these things and to challenge yourself, like, you're such a bubbly person. You're such a people person. I really love that. And even hearing how you had this one beautiful area of your life by going to the gym every day that you're like, I'm going to fucking chase that. Like, learning to switch off the external and listen to the voice within that's like, do what makes you happy, and this is what makes me happy. Like, hearing that and then you expanding on that and turning it into a health coaching career, and also the course correction. Like, it's so easy, it's so tempting for us, and we find a good thing to be like, oh, this is the final answer. I've arrived. And what happens is this like really hard pendulum swing from like, oh, it's travel. Oh, it's the right person. Oh, it's the right perfect job. And then, we course correct. Like, after a while, we're like, I'm hungry for more, or there's bits of this that I can refine too. And I think that is what separates, a growth mindset and eternal learners to people who are happy to just sit as is. To me, that's akin to death, but I don't know. I'm sure there are people out there that sit in it comfortably and also sit in it uncomfortably. And if they're listening and they're sitting in it uncomfortably, like, pursue, this is the clue, like following the breadcrumbs of like what makes me happy, and do that thing.
100%. That uncomfortability of being like, someone's saying something to you and it just like, I would love to do that. That like makes me so excited, but scares the fuck out of me at the same time. Like, that's the thing. The scary but amazing thing. Chase it until like you don't have to know where it's going to take you. You have no idea.
You don't. You can't know.
No, exactly not. And it's more even not even about like, it might not be perfect for you, but you might meet someone that will help you, or you might just have another conversation, or like you were saying, that woman that gave you that flyer, like if it wasn't for her, you wouldn't be here today. Like it's the simplest, smallest things
and
that can do that to you. God. And it's beautiful.
Absolutely. If she hadn't have given me that flyer, I wouldn't have moved to London and lived there for 2 years. When I was working with her, I was working for WorkSafe. I hadn't even put my teaching degree to use. The recession was in. There was no other jobs except for teaching. So I'm like, I'll finally use this teaching thing. Didn't realize that I would absolutely adore it. Found myself drawn to the kids that had a lot of fucked up things going on at home. And really resonated with those kids, really wanted to support those kids, remembering how school was such a salvation for me in a lot of ways. And really feeling like I had never lost the connection to my inner child. So I never looked at the kids like, oh, I don't know what that is. Like I felt like I could see it. Anyway, got a reputation for going into tough schools, so that when I came back to Melbourne, I got headhunted and rung to say, we've heard of the work that you've done in London. Would you want to work in a juvenile detention centre? And it all started from Veronica giving me that fucking flyer and me saying yes. Like,
go Veronica.
And then I won Teacher of the Year, and I got, $10,000 to go travel, and all these beautiful things happened, all as a result of that one chance that I took. And that chance that I took was the one that like you were saying earlier, like, on paper to society looked really irresponsible. I come from, like the Greek community isn't really known for like moving overseas and traveling and exploring the world. It's more like you're fucking wasting time. Go and buy a house, become a landlord and get married and have babies. Yeah. And there's beauty to that, and I love that, and I want that as well. And I had to turn that voice off and face off with being perceived as a failure temporarily. And mate, like within 5 years, what a huge change where I ended up, landing and what my specialty ended up being.
That judgment of just like, oh, but you're going off course. Like that's maybe your course.
It's a rite of passage.
It's such a beautiful thing to just like, yeah, it's kind of scary. It might make someone else feel uncomfortable, but just let me be in my uncomfortability. And I think like, even being a parent, watching, once Atlas gets to that age, it's going to have to be really
You'll
scary.
be eating your words.
You'll
be like, don't fucking do that. I said.
Come back to the nest. It's safe and cozy and warm over here. Don't go over there.
You'll be deleting this episode. Don't listen to what I said back then.
But it's such a like, yeah, it's such a learning thing. And it's just like, they go through that age where they, we're disgusting to them. Parents are just, between the ages of 13 and 21, whatever it is. It's like your parents are just, you're so off them, you don't want anything to do with them. And it's such a beautiful thing. And it's, so that they can explore and see other things and not stay in their nest and where it's cozy, and really get into the ugliness and meet all these new people and travel and do all the awesome things that, you get to learn and you get to see and see what the world is really about, and see how ugly and scary, but also how beautiful it is. And that's just all a part of it, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I felt quite controlled by family when I was growing up. And so it's no surprise that freedom has been a high value of mine for a long time. And I remember learning that people's opinion, that like that's them with their life experience. They're not necessarily trying to tell me what to do. They're not trying to take my autonomy away from me or my sovereignty. They're just giving me, like, based on what their choices have been and their life experience, what they genuinely would do if it was them. But they are not me. They don't have the data that I'm taking in. They don't have my life experience, my skills, my interests, my fears. I don't have theirs. So the gift of, like, obviously there's such a, like I said, there's a rite of passage in switching off the noise and going, come what may, I'm going to fucking own my mistakes. And if it fucks up, great. And that could possibly happen. Like, it could have been a disaster in London. And then, I would have learned and another path would have been taken. And that's my learning. Like, I get to own that rather than living from a playbook that someone else has given me that's kind of written in gibberish in some ways because it's not my voice. And then I think with that, the more that came along, the more discernment came along, because there was still parts of me that would delegate, like, oh, I don't know anything about this. Tell me what to do so someone can tell me what to do and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to own the mistake and then I don't have to worry. And
that's such a
mate,
thing.
didn't I make some mistakes listening to some feedback that I'm like, what? That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. But I'm like, oh, maybe I've got it wrong. Okay, yeah, I'll listen and I'll try that out. And what a deviation from the path that does end up becoming. And I really love that. And that's a real gift of feedback that I really had to learn. Initially as someone who was so defensive and like, don't tell me what to do. I know myself. I'm very reflective, self-reflective, and I hugely relied on that. And then I had the gift of a boyfriend who came along into my life and basically taught me the power of feedback. He did not cop any of my shit. He called me out when I needed it, and no one had ever done that before. And it was a horrific breakup, and we don't speak, and that's not my choice. But I still am so grateful to his impact on my life because he taught me discernment. Now I'm so careful about who I ask feedback from. Like, is it someone that's got my best interest genuinely at heart? Is it someone that isn't just going to give me positive fluff, bullshit feedback that is what I want to hear? Like, I want to hear from the friend that's going to give me the uncomfortable truth. Sure. And here's the thing, like, they might tell me 5 things and 3 might be like, yeah, that doesn't resonate because nothing stings. But if they hit me with something and it stings, I'm like, there's a fucking kernel of truth in there. I'm going to pursue that and face off with that in myself and work out what it is. Like, am I being a coward in some area? Am I refusing to, did I just have a blind spot that I hadn't seen and they've given me the gift of seeing now? Like, yeah, the discernment piece is a really big one and really important, I feel, with the journey of blocking out external voices and then learning how to invite them back in.
There's so many golden nuggets that you said there too, and a little bit that you said too a while ago to me. You were saying how when you do want feedback or you want to have a conversation or you want to vent to a close friend or someone that you have chosen to speak this to, you actually said to them, look, I'm not down to hear anything. I'm going to butcher what you said, but you'll probably, if you remember what
I remember that voice note.
You said to me, you say it, because I found like I am going to do that. And I feel like anyone listening should do this because it's so fucking powerful, because sometimes you are so tender. So sorry, you go.
Yeah, I think it's just learning how to tune inwards and actually advocate for what your little heart, your sweet, tender or hurt heart actually needs in that moment. And I've learned through experience that every person listens and then does what they think is best, but it's not necessarily what you need as best. So I've got some friends, for example, who might listen to something and then jump straight in with advice. I've got other friends who will just listen and offer nothing and just be a space for me to just unload all of my worries and hurts and be like, oh, good. And you know what? For me, it's fucking alchemy. Like, if I speak something through or I write something down, and that's why journaling is such a gift for me, it actually turns fucking messy pasta into, that's what it is. That's what was bothering me about this. And it clears, like it comes out of me and it's actually gone. It's not something I've suppressed. It's not something I'm still holding on to or building resentment over or stewing over. Like, yeah. So I've learned through trial and error how to really ask for what it is that I want. So, saying like, I have this beautiful friend and I said to her, and she can give some great, like, hard hitting truths. And I rang her and I needed to talk something through. And I said, I'm feeling really tender right now. Like, I know what I need right now is not the hard truths. I normally come to you and I really love that. You provide that right now. I need softness and compassion. and I'd love some thoughts that you have, but they've got to be delivered really softly because I'm wobbly right now.
That's so beautiful.
I think that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like really understanding what you require, and it's just, and in those really vulnerable, hard-hitting moments, this is where like I feel like relationships, like romantic relationships really struggle because you really want to tell your partner everything, but you know that especially when it's a male and a female, they deal with their emotions so differently, and you're so soft and vulnerable, this little thing in the corner, and then you're just like, this is how I feel, and they're coming and they're just like, rah, with this fresh, new, scary energy, and you're like, fuck, and just shattered into the corner, and then you get angry. And then as you got this, it's honestly, that's how it feels sometimes. It's just this to and fro, and it's just like, if I actually said to you, look, I really want to tell you the situation, but I don't want feedback. I just want you to listen, or you can give me feedback, but just know that I'm super tender right now, and I'm very vulnerable, and I'm quite scared to tell you. So whatever you're going to say, just I can't handle the hectic stuff at the moment. So just FYI, or I don't want any feedback at all. Just be my ears for the day. And having that conversation when you know that something's going to trigger you is so important. And you saying that was like, yeah, it really resonated, and it was something that I'm definitely going to do when I need it. So it's a really beautiful, it's medicine in that. It really is. It's super healing when you know what you need and you can actually tell somebody that. That's fuck, like you're jumping.
Fuck yeah, isn't it just?
In order to do that, you have to actually reassess how you're feeling first. And most people don't do that. They just go, listen to this, and then they get hurt and they're like, fuck you. And they're like,
That book, Eckhart Tolle's book, A New Earth, and I forget what the other one, what was the big one that he wrote?
I haven't read any of his books, to be honest.
Oh, okay. But he speaks about how people have a pain body, and I've really noticed this before. So I've noticed that when someone can get upset, rather than sit with it, work it out, unpack it, and look, I'm a woman. I'm a 38-year-old woman, so that's my way, and I'm not saying that's the way, and it's definitely not men's way at all. Women speak a lot more than men do. We share with our friends in a way that men commonly don't. These are big generalizations, but having gone through a lot of workshops and relationships, that is something that I've observed, and it's what I've seen. And he speaks about how it can popcorn, like rather than have the capacity to sit with that anger or that hurt or that disappointment, the next fucking person that comes along, oh, the dog's here, I'll just kick the dog, or I'll take it out on my kid and start screaming at them for something, or I'll take it out on my partner because he didn't put the trash out today, and they're like, what the fuck just happened to me? Like, where does this come from?
So like really about that, because my dog has copped it many times in the past, and I feel so sorry. I'm sorry, Goga, where are you? I'm sorry. Because it is, you just like, they just want, they're like, oh, happy, and they're like, hello, and you're just like, fuck off, and then they're just like, there.
Get away from me.
Oh my God, I just see myself like as a visual at the top, and I'm like, oh my God, like a bad movie. I don't want to see that, because it's so hard when you're in those spaces.
It really is. And what I love is your ability to admit this and be vulnerable and honest. And that's the way through, like sharing the messy part there, and then sitting with that and being like, okay, now that I've been able to see that part, I can go a little bit further and catch it when it's happening, and like go, you know what, I'm going to need a moment. So I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go and scream in the car and let my voice process some of that anger, and then come back in and be able to face something, or I'm going to need a few days, or whatever, like you can create that space to internally regulate and then come back, a different person. But, teenagers have it all the time. They're fucking hormonal. Like their hormones are actually going everywhere. It's like speaking from a girl's experience, having been one, like I remember
my goodness,
the huge reactions to the slightest of things. Like even someone being nice and offering me an orange juice, like fuck off, no, I don't want it.
Oh my goodness, isn't it? That was a very hectic time in my life. I feel like I've kind of like blurred that out, because it was very I was a psycho.
Identity preservation, black it all out.
know,
It didn't happen.
It didn't exist. But it's just like these moments are so valuable because we think that we're the embarrassing ones, but having these very real human experiences is about it. And it's not just that it's just me. We're all freaking doing it. So we get so in our heads and you're like, oh my God, why did I say that? Or why did I do this? And especially being in those years. But it's like, no, this is real. Like this is like the perfect lives on social media and stuff. Like they do not exist. The messy and the ugly and the stupid things that we say, these are the real moments. And don't think that you're the only one that does it, because we all fucking do it and we've all done it and we're going to keep doing it. And it's just and I think to make it easier for everybody else, when you're witnessing somebody do that, don't make them feel even worse than they can. Make them feel like, have a laugh and just like fucking do that all the time or whatever it is, because like, especially as a teenager, you can really go into your shell when someone catches you out in those moments of like being an idiot or being like exposing yourself truly. But that's also about choosing the people that you're around as well. And I think having those moments where you do feel criticized, it's just a big alarm bell of just like, maybe these are not my people, and learning that.
You know what? And we're women, so it's a different thing to men, but this is the gift that I've learned through going to workshops and through cultivating a life of having friendships where I can have these kinds of conversations. And in fact, this is the level of conversation that I have with friendships. And it's those conversations that heal so much, like that sense of aloneness and self. I know I'm talking about it, but it's such a recognizable feeling, like I'm the only one that, I don't know, fill in the blanks, that got fired today, or that is struggling to pay a bill, or crashed my car, or like insert whatever circumstance that someone's feeling a strong reaction to. Speaking in groups is so, and with trusted people is so fucking powerful. Like, I was speaking to you recently about how I was at a mother-daughter retreat, and the mothers at one stage all spoke about a challenge that they're facing with their daughters. And the mothers were from all over Australia, all different kinds of work. The girls' ages was from 10 to 14. There's other ones from, 14 to 17. And there was such a unique difference with each of the women, and yet there was so much commonality. The sadness over social media and the worry over the external influences over their daughters, and at such a transformative, hugely important stage in their life where so much can go wrong. And a mother's instinct is like, playing those images over and probably operating from that place. And it was just knowing that the mothers obviously are all focusing, like they're all different lines of work and none of them were teachers. So they're just focusing on their child and hypersensitive to and blowing up the issues that they may be seeing or experiencing. In hearing from other mothers, in hearing from me, a teacher, around, I don't have a daughter, but I can give you the very important data that I can see happening when none of you are around, and your girls and boys are interacting with each other. And this is the culture right now, and this is the influences right now, and this is what they're facing and how they cope with things. It just relaxes the entire issue. And I'm not making light of the issues, but it just gives that context and that missing perspective for mothers to still, to just relax a little bit, and also know, like, they're doing such a beautiful job, and this is a common thing. It's not them failing as a mother. It's not them failing their child or not preparing them enough for, peer pressure or whatever. It's also like it's what they're all going through at this age, and it's unavoidable.
It is. I think it's just trusting that, you as a parent did the work from the crucial ages and built their confidence and self-esteem to a point where they're in the big bad world now, and you've just got to trust that the little humans that you've raised have the foundations to make the best decisions, and wait till they get out of that haze of those hormones building and everything like that, and see actually what happens, because we all did it. Like, I feel like I personally didn't go through my psycho age until a little bit later. So like, I don't, psycho age, my hormone age. Like I felt around the 19, 20, even 18 to 20, I felt really disconnected from my mum at that age, where it was like maybe the age of like the 13 to 16, it wasn't as hectic as what I thought it would be. It was more a little bit later, but I also dealt with a lot of things. Like my father left at, well, was at like 16 as well. And there he is. Hey, Harry.
Harry.
And yeah, so I feel like I kind of mastered a lot of those stuff, and then they kind of popped up at a later age. But I also did a lot of drinking at that stage and just trying to forget a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, you're rebelling. You're rebelling the safety of the home because mum and dad have, or whoever is at home, has created a safety and a cocoon, and the outside world is dangerous. It is brutal. It is beautiful. It is wild. There are options everywhere. And there's this beautiful poem, and I can't think of exactly, I'm not going to do it justice, but it speaks about a ship doesn't get its strength from being docked in the pier. It gets its strength from weathering the storms. It has to leave the dock. It has to be hurt. It has to be in all of those different situations. And parents have to, obviously there's a lot of learning, but that inevitable release of protection and have them feel like, they've armed their children and provided this safe foundation for them to think critically for themselves, for them to make mistakes and come to parents, to be able to navigate those waters without them there.
Because you've just got such a beautiful lens of the way you see these young adults interact and the way they are, because I think when you see them as a parent, I feel like most parents, like this is just coming from an outsider. I've obviously haven't hit that age of parenting yet, but like seeing a 13-year-old or 14-year-old and the way they're kind of growing, you still see them as a baby. So you're still looking at their core values and how they actually interact with you in the home. But you seeing them the way they are around their peers, that's a whole different person. That is like, it's not even the same person sometimes, especially when you're going through that age. So that is almost even more powerful, because these parents have these, rose-colored glasses of these beautiful little 6-year-olds, but they're not them anymore. They're 16 and 17 and 18 and trying all these new things and meeting their new people and, having different interactions. And they don't know that person, because 9 out of 10 times these kids are hiding them from that parent, or they're too embarrassed to share that side of them because they're still exploring them themselves.
And the thing is, like science tells us that both boys and girls actually seek out and desire scientifically new voices, new experiences, new horizons. They don't want to hear from the same voice that has created the safety. They're also separating their identity, like they come from the womb of the mother. This is like the umbilical cord getting cut all over again in a different way.
Crazy.
And I don't have the parental love lens. Obviously, they're not my child. So I see them as they're presenting. Mm-hmm. And, anyone who works, you could even have that for, your cousin's kids or whatever. Like, if they're not your child, you can see them in a way that's different to the parent. And without the context that the parent knows, and just as they are as a free agent operating in the world. And it's a very different thing. Plus they genuinely are trying on different identities. Like I went through look at me now. I went through a fucking little 3-month goth stage. I dyed my hair black. I had black nail polish, and The Craft was out at the time. Sabrina the Teenage Witch was on.
I love that.
There was a whole swath of like witchy, magic-y kind of films.
I love Charmed.
Charmed, absolutely. Hocus Pocus,
Buffy,
like all of that was the rage, and and like the womb, the feminine mysteries is it's so magical to learn about as a teen as well, and. Yeah, like I tried that on and then it didn't fit, so I got rid of that one.
Going.
yeah. And then it was the rebel and the, you know, fuck you, fuck the system. I never swore at my parents, but I was really rebellious and angry. There was so much anger coursing through my body I can't express, and I didn't have that much to be angry about. Like, it was the hormones. I mean, it's a thing. It's unavoidable, and it's, yeah, I guess the parents strapping on, like, it's when I think about, you know, those Insta videos that I've seen of, you know, those like attack dog videos, and there's a guy that's got he's padded all up,
when they got the
and then they'll say the word and the dog will bite.
Yeah.
The dog is the teen. And the padded up man is the parent. Like, pad up. You know you're going to get some biting. You know it's going to come attack you.
Oh my
you can
God.
already anticipate it, so just prepare.
That's a perfect.
And know
That is perfect.
that eventually they will come out of it, and they will come back.
They do.
Like, I think to now, I've got a beautiful relationship with my dad now. I fucking hated my dad at that age. He disgusted me. I found him humiliating and mortifying. He could have breathed, and I would be like,
fuck up.
Yep. Exactly. And my mum, same thing. Like, I found her embarrassing. For a while there, I was ashamed of being Greek. And, you know, and this is a completely different topic altogether, but even thinking back, like the influences that I had as a 38-year-old woman at the time wasn't social media. It was magazine covers. It was Anchor Women. It was the movies. And everyone seemed like they were blonde and blue-eyed. Yeah. And there was no representation of an ethnic girl, let alone a woman of colour.
Of course.
Or let alone, you know, women who have different abilities or whatever. So, yeah, and when the Kardashians came out, as damaging as they have been and as fucking inane, they put ethnic women on the map. Like, not map, but we were represented all of a sudden. Like, this woman and I could be a family.
Curvy, dark features.
Dark feature, dark eyes, dark hair, it's olive skin.
True. They've done anything good in their life.
It's just been existing.
It's existing. Just coming out and just, you know, avoid the sex tapes.
So, which is what they're famous for, right? Nothing else. Yeah, so anyway, but I know that's way off topic, but
no, not at all.
You know, at that age, there's so many different things that we're trying on. I didn't embrace my curls, and it's funny because I got my hair dyed the other day, so it's styled in a way that I don't normally have. My hair's normally naturally curly.
Same.
I know, and it's funny, we're both like this. And
oh my God,
when I was a teen, like, I was so mortified over my curls. I thought they were manly. I thought they were disgusting and untidy. And I would iron my hair with an actual fucking iron. Not just me, me and all of the Greek girls that I was friends with. We'd all do it for each other and have this little, like, fuzzy bit at the top where the iron couldn't reach the very top root of the hair.
And then your hairdresser used to crack the shits because they see holes in your hair from the iron, and they'd be like, "You're fucking ironing your hair."
Yeah, it was crazy, and that was something we tried on until we learnt as we got older to embrace. And I love my curls now. I feel so lucky that I'm a very low maintenance person. Like, wash my hair, there's the flexible mousse, my curls are everywhere. I don't have to think about it again.
No. And even like getting
I never saw that.
The curls was a massive part of my journey too, babe. Like, I ran so far away from them because I was so embarrassed because all the girls I was around were beautiful, straight, blonde hair mainly. And like, it was, I went into year 7 with a butchered haircut that my cousin decided to cut, and my hair was so long, and then he cut it up here. My hair was super curly, so I literally had a fucking afro going into year 7, shitting myself, going, oh my God, I couldn't even butterfly clip it back because it was so short. I had like 100 in them. Yeah, the butterfly clips. I had so many of them. And it was just a thing where I was like, the iron came out, and I was like, iron. And then the Muster was the first hair straightener, and that was like my bestie, and had the crimpy. You should take the plates off and you could crimp it and do all the things as well. And that was a thing where I was like, perfect, hide my identity. And I just
blend in, look like everybody else, do what you can,
until my hair got incredibly unhealthy. It was very thin, it was very frayed, and
I can't even imagine that looking at your hair now. Like, it is just gloss and gorgeous.
Honestly,
every time.
It's been a 9-year progress. 9 years of not only physically trying to make it look good, but also let it sit with my identity and actually accept who I am as a person. That was the two parts that I had to figure out. Yes, what it physically looked like, but how it actually looked, how was I supposed to wear it on my head, and how it actually made me felt in my soul. Like, there was so many different things and layers to that. It wasn't just you have curly hair. It was all these things that I was just like, my Italian side, me trying to run away from that at the same time as well. Like, I did was, hung around a lot of Aussies, and it did. I was like kind of hid from that. I was a WOG girl, and I didn't kind of feel like it was accepted. But now it's just like, mate, WOG and proud, and I don't give a fuck. Like, my hair is always curly 90% of the time. And, I just got my hair cut yesterday and she blow waved it. So, and I do rock it sometimes. I love it. I still love it.
Yeah.
But I still, like, even when she was blow waving it, I was like, it's really flat at the back. I'm like, can we just, like, get some volume in here? And I was like, I'm not. I literally said that to her. She goes, you could tell you're used to just the curls now. Because I'm so used to it. And, and I get so many compliments now. Your hair looks beautiful. And I'm like, well, it didn't happen overnight. I had to go through those first years of it looking damaged as fuck and just like very just awful, because like not straightening it and then not straightening it. There's a few years where your hair's trying to learn.
You're working it out too. Like, there's the creative expression of like, and throughout all of this, there's the creative expression of trying out like what feels most like me. What do I like the most? You
just have to learn who you are again. And those years of mid-20s for me, I had to reinvent myself. I'm like, who am I? Who is Stephanie? Who is she about? What is she? What does she do in this world? How does she move through this world?
I remember having that moment too. Like, I remember someone asked me what my favorite color was and I didn't answer, and that devastated me because I was like, I don't even know who the fuck I am. I don't even know what my favorite color is.
No,
I was so numb that I just, and this was, prior to moving to London and me thinking, I'm so used to trying to blend in. No fucking idea. Can't.
And that's the best part of going overseas at such a young age, because you can be whoever you want to be, try on 100 new hats, and no one knows. And that's why if I spoke to anyone that was going to uni after high school, like, defer and get the fuck out of here. Go travel. Go learn what this world's about. Learn who you are. Find out who you are. Don't pretend to be this corporate person when you're not, or don't pretend to be this artsy person when you're not. Go find it, and you will find it, because you will see people, different types of people that are polar opposites to your little bubble in Melbourne or wherever you are. And you surround yourself with the same people, and like, you don't grow. It's like looking at the WOGs that got here in the 40s and the 30s, and they died in the 80s, and they didn't know one word of English because all they did was surround themselves by Italians or Greeks or their own community. So they never got out of there because it was too scary, but it was, look, poverty wasn't too far away from that, but it probably still was. So it was a fear of, there was coming to a whole new country. So it was different back then. But that is a great example, because you don't put yourself out there, you don't grow, and you don't learn the language that you've been living in for the last 50 years. And that's crazy to me now. Like,
and you're right. Like that, I had a lot of family challenges before I moved to London, a lot of friendship stuff that was blowing up. And I know, like, I think I've had someone explain to me, like, if you've got one area of your life that's shit, but you've got friendship and health and the other areas, like, you can handle things and you're okay. If you have two, it's getting rocky. If you've got three, the triage, like, you're fucked. This is where people can do really drastic things. This is where rock bottom comes along, and it can be dangerous. It's so fucking overwhelming. Everywhere you look is a shit show. So I remember being in a similar place to that before I booked my flight and left, and it was the biggest gift to myself that I ever gave. All of a sudden, I took myself out of toxic environments and was in healthy. It was like a seed, like, put into healthy soil. I was 24 when I moved out.
So young.
And moved overseas, yeah. So, Yeah, and the gift of anonymity and the gift of like, it's a clean slate. So you naturally gravitate to whatever you're into without the constraints of family judging or preventing, or friendship groups from cock blocking you from those things. Like you just naturally go there, and you naturally, anyway, it's amazing.
It is. It's such a beautiful way to learn and to really reinvent yourself and learn who you are authentically. Like, there's people still working it out. Like you don't want to get to that age where you're just like, you got married and you had kids, and then you just kept working, or you kept doing things, and then, and then you get to an age where you're 70. And I heard a couple of speakers and like health coaches and that look after mature women, and the most common audience is in their 70s, where their either husbands have passed away and their grandkids have moved out of home and they're by themselves, and now they're trying to work out who they are because they've spent their whole lives giving and doing, and they do not know who they are. That broke my heart into pieces when I heard that. I was like, what? And it exists, and it's so, so common, especially in our parents' generation. Like, they just...
the pressures that they face, like each generation has their own unique challenges, but like they couldn't do fucking anything. Like they could go to uni, and then there was specific jobs that they could go through, really. And our grandmothers, like my grandmother won a scholarship to be a midwife, and her dad wouldn't let her go. She had to look after her siblings. My other grandma got pulled out of primary school for the same reason. Like, and this can, anyway, I feel like that gets into a feminist topic, which is really interesting, which is a different one altogether. But, it's completely different challenges, and I'm definitely not making light of them. And I've been really grateful. Like I went to therapy, and at that stage in my life, and it was such a gift. He was helping me unpack the mess, because I was starting to make my own meaning from all of this. Like all these areas in my life must be shit because I'm shit, because I'm fucking faulty in some way or whatever. And I was so grateful that he helped me unpack a lot of stuff and help me see myself and feel really clear on some things at a really messy time in my life. So I'm so grateful to have access to therapy that, our generations before didn't.
No way.
Access to workshops that I can go to. And you know what? Like, I know we've been talking about, the journey of being a teenager in some ways and an early 20s, but I'm in my late 30s, and I'm going to go through this cyclical reinvention continuously.
Healing is a part of being a forever teacher, like you said earlier in the podcast. Like we are just life students, and we're just as long as you're open to it and just listening to it. Like I've said this 100 times, like people that follow me on Instagram or listen to the other episode, it's desire is your compass, and follow it to the fucking death. Go after it to a point. Listen, desire is everything. And if you don't like it, or if it makes you feel weird anyway, and that's not uncomfortability. Uncomfortability also comes with a little bit of desire, and that's the difference. Where when something is a hard no, hey, there he is. Hi, Harry.
He's been insisting he needs to sit up here.
Hello.
So this is where we are.
Hello. You can put a face to the bark. Hello, Hazza. Yeah. But yeah, putting being that student and understanding that this is my like, and what I like is what I'm going to follow. And like we said before, we don't have to know the end result. Just follow it and see what happens. See who you meet, what you sign up for, what courses you take, or nothing happens and continuing on another road.
And you know what? This actually segues into masculine and feminine, because desire and like following that is an element of the feminine, which is separate to gender. Mm-hmm. It we've all got masculine and feminine qualities in each of us. But the idea of having an outcome to get to is a masculine concept. And thinking what's this desire going to get me to is quite a masculine way of looking at it, whereas the feminine way is let's see. Let's flow with it and let's see. And there's beauty to both. Like, you know, when I was speaking about that Seven Sisters Festival in Victoria, and I'm sure they've, you know, improved it now, but something that I really laughed at with a girlfriend when we both went down there, we were we were loving the idea that, I wonder what it's going to be like with no men around. Like, just, you know, we live in a co-ed society.
That's my high school years.
And we went, yeah, and mine for 2 years at Zion.
Yes.
But yeah, and so we went there, and there was so much beauty and so much softness and so much wildness and expression, and that is so typical of the feminine, and an expression like that is the feminine. And we really missed some parts of the masculine. Like, thank fuck for the masculine. Do you know what the parking situation was like? It was a fucking shit show because women were like, I kind of park there. Actually, no, back it up. There was such a it was just a mess, and it needed the masculine to be there to be like,
oh my God,
here's the straight lines that we've already arranged, and we've brought structure and linear systems here, and we are go.
That's why it's so important.
In other areas it was gorgeous, but like I could see the masculine missing in this.
In society,
you know?
That's why it's so friggin' important to have that balance and learn which one you kind of sit in, because like we all have different phases of it
at different times.
Yeah.
Like at work, often it is the masculine. Like I'm thinking about shit that needs to get done, and I'm using my mind. You know, and I'm a Virgo. I love logic. I love analyzing things. And then there's the soft feminine who's, you know, using a behavioral or human approach. Like it's a blend. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. You know, we're all kind of in that, and it's different to the way men and women relate. And maybe that's a topic for another podcast. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been really beautiful, like learning from teachers of feminine embodiment and really unpacking what all of this stuff meant, because for a long time I got told I was in a way a little bit masculine in my approach to things, and I don't recognize myself now to who I was then.
Feel ya.
But it was the thing that caused me to go off onto this journey of discovering, well, what the fuck's a feminine woman then? And I guess learn where I was not tuning into what my heart actually desired on some things, and was just making head-based decisions. And it's what led me to feeling quite numb, actually, because I wasn't listening to what I actually wanted. And that's where the birthplace of learning what my heart needs came from. So when you were speaking earlier about like learning how to ask for the support that you know you want, like today I actually want to work on problem solving. Let's work on this together. Or today I just want to be heard and, you know, vent the thing that I need to, or whatever, came from the difficult space of, not listening at all and having to teach myself to do that.
Exactly. It's such an interesting place. Like I've been, like my whole life I was in my masculine. I was, not my whole life, I'd probably say from like, I think once my dad sort of left my life, that's when I felt my masculine step forward, because I felt that I had to be that person in my family's life. Not for anything, because I was the oldest one, and, you know, it was just a really hard time for all of us. So it was almost like
someone needed to step up and take
and I just,
leadership, be really solid in that, make decisions. Yeah.
And in this space, I became really angry. I was so angry, and I just had no idea who I was. And I was just, I just met really shitty people, and I just, I was very, very angry. So that was, and it
sounds like you got hurt.
Yes.
And that you would have closed your heart off and put big walls around it, going, right, the heart is so painful that we're just going to shut her down, or not invite her to the table. So the brain's taking over, please and thank you.
Exactly.
And,
that is legit what happened. And I stayed in that phase for a very long time, up until probably my mid-20s, as I was saying, when I started sort of evolving and started learning about who I really was, and started getting the curly hair back and all those sorts of things that sort of were the beginning of getting into my feminine again. And really, you know, because up until, you know, my how long now? 2 years ago when I became pregnant. And that was when I really dove into my feminine because I had no choice. But then that's where my brain was just like, I need to do, I need to do, I need to train, I need to do this, I need to do all these things. But my body's just like, no, we are just sitting and being. And this was the war that was in my head for the first trimester because I was so freaking sick. And all I wanted to do was do all the things to distract my thoughts. But I was like, my body is just telling me to sit the fuck down and nurture that baby because you have to. And it was very hard for me. I felt my ego die 1,000 times in that moment because I just had to learn about other ways to help my mental health rather than exercise. And I had to learn all these different things. And it was really hard for me. I've really struggled because it was also COVID. I was also home alone a lot with my thoughts and had nothing to distract myself with. But again, I had to go through it. You can't go over it.
Can't go under it. You got to go through it.
Exactly. I had to go through it and I did. And, exercise after that became less important in my life. And I thought it was who I was, but it isn't who I am. And, I don't train every day as like I used to. And I do miss it. I do miss it a lot. But there's other things that are more important in my life right now, and I still go for walks every day and do all these things, but I'm not in my head. If I don't train, I'm a shit person, which is what I did ultimately. So, allowing to be in your feminine and just see, observe and listen and really just be was a huge learning curve. And I felt like I really grew during that moment for me personally.
Yeah. And there's it's so nuanced too, being can sound lazy.
Yes.
But it's actually not the same thing. They're very, very different.
You hit the nail on the head. And that's why I got so in my head because I'm like, I'm fucking lazy. And I didn't know the difference.
Distorted masculine judges the feminine and wrongs her and says that's just laziness, that's not having a strong will, that's wasting time. If someone's getting those sorts of thoughts and catching those, that where in your life have you been shutting down your own heart and your own desires? We're such busy humans these days. We need rest. It's I think something that constantly blows my mind is we're these busy little humans, but none of us can escape the need for sleep. We collapse and we have to lie stationary for 7-8 hours and not be tapped in and do fucking nothing in order to survive every day. And if we don't do that, we die.
Mm-hmm.
Past a certain point, we will die. And, I think to how people have notifications of work emails on their phone. When did that happen? There used to be a clear delineation between work life and home life, and with, working from home and, the ease of this and the ease of that. Where has, the busyness encroached on our rest?
COVID.
And rest isn't a loud voice that yells and says, don't forget me. No, it's actually the other things the laundry that needs to be done or the children or whatever. And you're right, COVID was a really big one. It was massive. And I know that this is going to be interpreted maybe in different ways, but I remember at the time thinking we've all been so busy. Fuck, this is such a big – the feminine's just come along and gone, fuck you all, put us all on our knees. We're not allowed to leave the house. We are forced to rest. We are forced to connect with our families. And I hated COVID, don't get me wrong. The lockdowns are why I left. I completely disagreed with everything that our premier did in Victoria at the time, including the first beginning where it was shutting down those high-rise towers with half an hour's notice for all of those poor people that were living there. Outrageous, disgusting. Anyway, enough said. But, it was one of the reasons, after 2 years of that, I'm you know what? I want to give my feminine even more of an opportunity to breathe and to relax into my nervous system. I'm so proud still of the fact that throw me in a crisis, mate, I am your woman. I am unflappable. I have got shit under control. That's why I could work in juvenile detention for as long as I did, and could have gone on for a lot longer as well. I thrive in amongst violence, amongst so many different things happening. But Byron and coming here is where I've learned softness, and my nervous system just didn't have this reference point. I came from a family of 4, boof, like it's a big household. There's always people like here. Oh my, it's been different. It's the beach, nature, so much accessibility to that.
You would have learned so
the
much
clean
about
produce, the, lack of just toxins everywhere, EMFs, air pollution, like everything. I like the smaller town mentality and the humanness that I can actually experience rather than like just a person passing me on the street. I think I've said to you before, like, it's such a beachside town here. Like, you can see the same stranger 3 times in a day. Like, oh, that's that guy that walks his dog.
I love that.
At that time at the beach, and then he's at the IGA, and then he's at, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of a bit of village living, which my grandmother would probably laugh at, thinking, we left the village to give you a better life in Australia and give you all these opportunities, and that's where you want to go back to.
Honestly.
And I don't mean to romanticize village living. I know there's a lot of work involved with homesteading, with, cows and running a farm and not having access to, Western medicine in the villages. But yeah, just shooting the shit and telling you what I like down this way.
I love it. I love it so much. But I thank you so much. Everything you say and breathe is just, I just connect in so many ways. And it's just, I hope the listeners could feel that as well, because I just love it. And everything that you're about, it's just absolutely beautiful. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me on this episode today. So
you know how fucking mutual the love is. I just look at your bubbly, like, beautiful heart, discerning mind. Like, you're fucking on it with so much stuff. You're so kind. Like, thank you again, Kathy and Phil, because the friendship setup, you nailed it.
I know, if you want to find a friend, I'll put the details in the show notes of who they are. And you might have another side hustle, guys.
Tinder for friends.
Oh, I love it so much. But yeah, you're amazing, and just everything that you've done is just so inspirational, and you should be so proud of yourself, because I'm proud of you too.
Ditto, and thank you so much for having me. I love being your friend. I loved being on here. It's been great, and I love you lots.
Love you, darling. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Sending lots of love.
That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the episode and received a few good takeaways from it. If anyone popped into mind while you were listening that you feel may benefit from it, please share it across. Your support really helps promote my podcast. And to follow all the latest things that I'm up to at the moment, you can find me on Instagram at Steph Marie Holistic Healing. Thank you again, guys. Have the best day, and we'll see you on the next episode.